Hello everyone, it's great to be back here with you again. And before we get started, I'd like to say that if you like the video, please like the video and subscribe. Would love you to join this community. And today, the game we're going to talk about is Area 51. Developed by Midway Studios Austin. Midway Studios Austin is known for a handful of games. They worked on the Hobbit game, and they worked on a Tribes game, and they worked on this game, and Black Site Area 51 as well, which I have yet to have played. I hope to someday. And the game was published by their publisher, Midway Games, which in the 2000s, Midway Games, they were just crushing it. They really were. And Midway has a very rich history in gaming, all the way back to the arcade days. And Area 51 actually started as an arcade IP, and I remember my older brother just destroying this arcade game. Could basically beat the game anytime he played it. So I thought that was always really cool. And so around the time this game got announced, I was very interested. One, for my love of Midway, for having made such fantastic titles. The Suffering, the Mortal Kombat games, Deception and Shaolin Monk, Psyops, the Mindgate Conspiracy, Narc, Blitz the League. I mean, in the PlayStation 2 era, Midway was just crushing it, and it really meant a lot to me. And maybe 10 years ago or so, when I was trying to look around for Midway games, I had actually come across, I believe on their site, they were basically offering all of these PC versions of the titles as freeware, essentially. So I don't know if that's still a thing nowadays that you can come across. But I've always had a love and nostalgia for playing this on a console, and I played this as a kid on the console. And so when I wanted to play it again, here I was. I picked it up for PlayStation 2 many years ago. I've played this game many times, and so I just recently did another run through of it. And so just wanted to share some thoughts about the game, its history, and how I felt about playing it now that I'm a little older, a little more seasoned, you know. So before we talk too much development, history, and the game experience, let's just look at the game. I mean, right away, when this was originally coming out, the artwork on the box was just very striking to me. It said that there's a mystery here. I knew it was going to be a scary survival horror FPS shooter game, and these were right up my alley. I was 12 years old, 13, when this game was announced and was coming out. And I really also like just the display of the spine. I mean, Area 51 just looks so cool. And on the back, we're going to get all the things that you would want to see from a paranormal Area 51 experience. Things about conspiracies. There's aliens. You know, and they're talking a little bit about some of the features on the back, multiplayer, etc., which this had an online component. Unfortunately, I didn't dive into that. But I do also love to see this. This is old school, powered by GameSpy. When's the last time you heard of GameSpy? I don't even know if that's still a thing, but I always thought that was pretty funny. And then on the inside here, we're going to get something quite similar to the outside box. We have the manual with the same artwork and the CD with the same artwork. And just popping this manual open here, the first thing that I love is we get an advertisement for Narc on the back, which is another Midway game that I was just discussing. It's an okay game. Maybe I'll talk about it someday, but there it is. And I have everything. I have the registration card and all. We also get a Mortal Kombat Deception ad on the inside too. All very fun games that really speak to me. But otherwise, the manual is pretty standard. It's in black and white. It does have a nice little spine texture, if you can see the little bolts in the spine there. But it goes through some of the controls and how to choose the different modes. We get a little bio for each character and the enemies, which is pretty cool. And it tells you a little bit about, oh, here's some of the types of pickups and things you're going to find. It's a little excessive, to be honest. You probably don't need to show, every little item that you can pick up in the game, but, so be it. We still have the manual. We have some interesting details in there. And let's go ahead and get this set up. And there we have it on the shelf. So the game was developed on an in-house engine, which is very cool. It's just something you don't see nowadays, right? People are generally making all games on Unreal. And because of that, there is a cohesion to modern gaming where systems, controls, UI design, I mean, a lot of those things are already pressed into the template that game designers are using today. But, you know, back in this generation, people were still out there building their own game engines, and as a result, it was really changing the seasoning, the flavor, the way in which the game was going to play when you picked it up. And so I thought it's always really fun to get that experience because it does feel personalized to the game. I mean, Midway Studios Austin built an engine for a game that their studio would go on to make only 3 games in total, so 3 or 4 games. And so I've always thought that was pretty interesting. And Area 51 was developed over 3 years. The game does sport some pretty big celebrities. I think the 2 big ones are the main character, Ethan, is voiced by David Duchovny, well known for X-Files, so very fitting choice for the role. And Marilyn Manson is the alien in the game, the main alien guy. And so I just always thought that was funny. Marilyn Manson was a huge selling point for this game, as I remember. And the game was also, I may be on track to get a film one day, someday. It came out in 2005, and Paramount Pictures had bought film rights for the movie adaptation in 2004. And I guess that was 20 years ago now, so, you know, we probably won't ever see a film for this, but it still exists. The rights are out there. So yeah. And the story it tells is an interesting one. You play as this guy, Ethan Cole. He's part of a hazmat team of operatives that's been sent in to clean up a virus that has been unleashed within Area 51. Now, if you want my perspective, you probably want to get some guys a little more experienced than 4 hazmat dudes. And this is their B team. Their A team already went in and disappeared. So probably want to get someone with a little more, you know, skill. And nothing against hazmat guys. I would be rolling up in there with like the Doom guy on my squad, right? So, and that's about it. I mean, your goal ultimately is to make your way through Area 51, destroy the virus, save the day, so on and so forth, quarantine the situation. But a little backstory, the story that's kind of unfolding as the game goes, there was an alien that crashed in Roswell and was captured and negotiates with the Illuminati. Says, hey, we want to build a research base. We'll make some crazy science for you. And the Illuminati says, yeah, why not? We'll give you a research base in Area 51, and we'll give you human test subjects too. I mean, this totally makes sense. And anyways, they were working on developing a virus that leaks from its containment, and then, you know, people in the lab get infested. And there's a reason why it leaks. There's a little twist in there. But I'll save some of those details for you to pine through when you play the game. The levels themselves are generally connected by still images, maybe some 3D cutscenes that kind of take you through the overarching story. But a lot of the story is, you know, hey, I'm in room A, and now we're in the cutscene, and this spooky thing's happening, and now I need to make it to room B, and we have to do this mission to get there. That's usually the game. So I would kind of describe it. It's in the corridor shooter realm. It's pretty linear and straightforward, and so goes the story, pretty linear and straightforward. Because of the content, Area 51, conspiracy, aliens, mutating virus, you would think that there's a lot of fat kind of hiding underneath this thin story, but the story overall, I would say, is pretty subsurface. It implies that it wants to be more than it is. Maybe that's just my perception, but I think what really holds it back and creates that perception within me is that going back recently and playing it, I didn't realize this, I guess, when I was younger, but this is a pretty short game. I finished it in maybe 5.5 hours, 6 hours, and this is through really taking the long route and exploring all that I can. And so I think if the story had a little more beef to it and was a little longer, a couple more hours, you could probably flesh it out in a more interesting way. I mean, when the game ends, I think that's when everything starts to get really interesting about the story it is telling. So that's kind of unfortunate in some ways. But the story is not only a big aspect of the gameplay is too, right? So let's talk about that. This is a first-person shooter game. You're going to get a slew of weapons, machine guns, shotgun, pistol, and so on. And you'll essentially, as I was saying, move from room to room. You're mainly fighting one core type of virus zombie dude, and occasionally some aliens and things like that. And later, as you get further into the game, you'll meet more like elite alien soldiers. But these are kind of the three core types of enemies you're going to fight. And be honest, sometimes the gameplay is pretty fun. Shooting the weapons feels punchy and engaging, and fighting with the enemies, sometimes you'll get swarms of them on the screen. Other times you'll be navigating around rooms and fighting them up or down below you and stuff. And so it can be pretty fun. There's some later levels where you're doing a lot of like sniping or long distance shooting, or you're like fighting on a recreation of the moon, implying that the moon landing was filmed in Area 51. So there are some very cool environments that make for these fights, and overall is pretty enjoyable to play. Early on especially, you'll spend time fighting within a team. So there's kind of this team dynamic. In some ways those team members are pretty scripted, but I still enjoy those moments. It feels like there's some dynamic nature to the fights themselves because of that. And yeah, just overall fun. There are some other fun mechanics. You can dual wield weapons, and there is a little light platforming throughout the game that you'll do. Another big aspect of this game, which I thought was interesting as a kid and continue to find interesting, is in your UI there's a little bar that will pop up when you're near a secret, and the closer you get, the higher up the bar will grow and it'll turn red, meaning you're like right near the object. And so research is a big part of this game, and you'll walk around and you'll research aliens and secrets, and there's a little research module built into the arm of your suit that you'll use to scan these items. And when you scan enough items, you will unlock little secret movies and things in the campaign's main menu. And so it is kind of fun to go around and research and find these things, especially if you're a completionist. And they do add a nice little bit of depth to the story and the world building that's kind of going on here. And so this was a big part of the gameplay experience, and I remember really enjoying just scrounging around every part of the world to pretty much find all of these secrets. Another aspect to the shooting that's fun is you will, in the later stages of the game, get mutations where you can turn into a mutation yourself in mid stages, and so those are pretty fun. You kind of get super strong. You can use crazy melee moves. You can see enemies who now have a highlighted glow, and so there is a little bit of, again, dynamic play to the action experience that's pretty fun. And so yeah, a couple other things I was thinking. The UI is pretty light. You just see your health, you see that little research bar, and that's about it. Just really lets you enjoy the ambiance of the game, which is something I always like. I hate very messy and overabundant UI and things like that, or HUD that gets in the way, right? The game is quite linear, just kind of taking you through corridors. And otherwise, I'd say that it's hard to have a serious critique about the gameplay experience itself, because it is pretty good, but also the game is pretty short for some of its gameplay aspects to begin to feel dried out. And so for a 5-hour runtime, it's pretty solid. Now, comparing this in 2005, some of the big releases, if I remember right, are Call of Duty 2, Battlefield 2, King Kong, I think, came out, Doom 3, SWAT 4. So that was kind of its FPS competition of this time, and so you can think about your enjoyment of those games versus this one and kind of pair it up against the two. And I would say this is on the average to weaker side overall. I mean, some of those games went on to spawn these crazy huge franchises, and unfortunately Area 51 did not do that. But I did enjoy the game. It was fun to revisit and play. In the sound department, the voice acting is really good. I mentioned some of the celebrities that come along to play, and You'll hear Ethan Cole a lot throughout the game, David Duchovny, and he brings in a good performance. And it honestly really adds to the atmosphere of the game and just makes it engaging that a good actor is here. And not only is he a good actor, but he's a really good voice actor in here too. So I did enjoy that. And the alien totally sounds like Marilyn Manson, which I find hilarious every time I play the game. There's also a slew of ambient and science fiction sounds, whether you're scanning something or you're walking around these environments where a UFO is parked in a department somewhere and things like that. And it really adds to the atmosphere, and I think it does so quite well, and it's pretty engaging, and so that really kept me in the game at all times. Again, with the guns being very fun to shoot, they sound punchy and are exciting, and the quality of the sound overall is quite good. It doesn't sound compressed. It doesn't sound like it's 192 kilobits per second or something like that. It sounds really good, and so I appreciated that. But the one thing that comes to mind with the sound is I don't exactly remember a whole lot of music in the game. I went on YouTube and I looked up, apparently there's like tons of ambient tracks for this game, but I think they just kind of slip my mind when I'm playing, and maybe they're more part of that ambient background noise that I was describing that I think of, but nothing was too standoutish there. I'd probably say it was kind of generic. And graphically, I think playing the game on PlayStation 2 nowadays, it's pretty fuzzy. It's pretty fuzzy. And one of the things I'll say is this is one of the first games where I really began to notice FOV being a thing, because honestly, when you're playing Area 51 without any modifications on a just standard console, the FOV is so low that it feels like everything is right up in front of your face when you're moving around and you're doing things, and that did kind of hold back and required an adjustment, especially by today's standards when you're playing some games. And so that was kind of the big thing that always stood out to me playing Area 51 in the graphics department. But otherwise, it's pretty template. I mean, the textures don't look bad, but I think the art style and presentation is just a little generic, to be honest. So, and those are kind of my big thoughts about the game. The story is pretty standard. It's kind of surface level because the game is pretty short. The gameplay's fun. The gameplay is quite fun, and for a 5-hour runtime, never really dragged on. And I did like the amount of variety that the game continued to offer as the game went on. Just in the sound department, the game's fun and it sounds great. And graphically, it's of its era, 2005. I think the FOV is what's the most challenging experience playing the game. And so overall, I commented at the beginning, I love Midway games. Midway games of the 2000s, I think they knocked it out of the park every time with very straightforward mid-budget titles that were kind of unique and interesting and were doing something different. And I think all the games that they made really did something different. And Area 51, I think, does fit that standard still. I've played this game many times. I have a lot of nostalgic love for the game. But objectively, I can say that when you think about games from this era as well, I rattled off a few of them earlier, I can understand why critics would have walked away and said, this is a pretty average experience overall. I wish the game was a little longer, had a little more depth to its systems, right? And maybe a little more optimization in the visuals department. And that could have been with his art style, but also technically, and kind of open that FOV up, man. I want to see what's going on in the world. But otherwise, those are some of my thoughts. I like the game. I do like the game personally. And technically and objectively, I can kind of understand as well why someone would say it wasn't their favorite or something. And that is the odd thing about the game. I think most people say Area 51 is a fantastic game that they have a lot of love for, and I agree. I love Midway games. I'm a big fan of that era. So, all right, those are my thoughts. Did you play Area 51? Would love to know what you think. I mean, I'm kind of putting out some spicy takes here, so share your thoughts, share your opinions, and look forward to hearing from you. Again, if you liked the video, always appreciate the like, and also appreciate the subscription if you decide that that's something you want to do. Well, until next time, again, appreciate you tuning in. Stay well, stay healthy, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. All right, y'all, and take care. See ya.